Well, welcome to Blue Monday. If you're of a certain age, you might remember that as a song by New Order. Thought this was interesting. New Order, actually, the band, has launched a campaign to help out with mental wellness and mental health with a charity and a support group in the United Kingdom. So I thought that was interesting. What is Blue Monday? Now, I don't know about you, but it's been a while since I heard about it, and it tends to be one of those stories that comes up a lot during the news cycle. It's the third Monday in January, and look outside. It's been rainy and wet in Halifax, and we've certainly had, not the best weather. But the other part of it is the daylight hours, shorter number of daylight hours. We're creeping back up over 9 hours per day now, and it's going to get better as winter progresses. But I don't think we're going to get through a winter without snow. That's for sure. But all of that to say, something popped up on my radar. Something came to my email box about PSPNET. Now, I've mentioned to you before that I'm a first responder, and this is part of the support network that was offered to what they describe as public safety personnel or first responders. And, well, there may be perhaps more of a reason to be mindful of seasonal affective disorder, Blue Monday, your mental wellness. And, there's going to be campaigns in the next few weeks to talk about this, but I wanted to talk to Dr. Luke Schneider about it. And he's joining the conversation. He is a registered psychologist with the Nova Scotia Board of Examiners in Psychology and the College of Psychologists of Ontario, a clinical research associate at PSPNET, and he's here to talk to us about Blue Monday. Is it inappropriate to say Happy Blue Monday?
I'm not too sure. I mean, you can. I mean, that's probably goes a long way to combat the blues, doesn't it?
What is your training? What does it tell you about what Blue Monday is?
Well, it's a complicated thing, to be honest with you, because if you dig back into the history of Blue Monday kind of starts with Cliff Arnell, a psychologist, in about 2005, who kind of coined this term. And it's really based on sort of a loose approximation of different variables. And it's just kind of a culmination of things like it's after Christmas, the bank accounts are low, we're a little bit drained, the weather isn't great. And so, that's where this idea of Blue Monday came up. But really what it comes down to is there's not really one particular day of the year that is going to be worse than others. But there's always just going to be these moments throughout the year where things just seem to pile up for people and they need to be taking care of their mental health a little bit more.
I find it a little bit ironic that it was launched as a marketing campaign for a travel company that doesn't exist anymore. So yes. Blue Monday has outlasted that whole marketing campaign. And the Canadian Association of Mental Health in some ways describes it as almost a self-fulfilling prophecy. If we were focusing on our mental health and wellness, and we talk about seasonal affective disorder, we talk about depression, that, people talk about triggers or behavior that follows what we're, that the big secret, put out in the universe what you want to get back. So I want to get to first responders in a moment, but, what is the overall recommendation for how to deal with this time of year, which might just be, cyclical because of all the things that you just described?
Yeah, well, there's one research group that's come out and they've tried to flip Blue Monday on their head, and they've tried to rebrand that as Multicolored Monday. So one of the things that they try to encourage people to do is wear bright colors and get out and be more active. So in a lot of ways, to combat things like Blue Monday or just times when we're feeling a little bit down and depressed is often things like changing our behavior and being more aware of our thoughts. And so that can really go a long way to help combat things like depression.
What is PSPNET? What is that?
Well, PSPNET is a really interesting and worthwhile initiative. So right now, PSPNET is an online, internet-delivered cognitive behavior therapy service. And so what that does is it helps to connect people with evidence-based skills to help manage things like depression, anxiety, post-traumatic stress injury, that sort of thing. And right now, the PSPNET is quite beneficial and geared towards people who are, like you mentioned in your introduction, first responders, or people that operate under the umbrella of public safety personnel, thinking of fire, ground search and rescue, corrections officers, border officials, police, RCMP, dispatching 911, all of those people who we know could benefit from some more evidence-based psychological skills. And so PSPNET is one of many varieties to help improve the mental health of our first responders.
Can you walk me through perhaps how it works?
Yeah, absolutely. So the way that it works is in your traditional therapy paradigm, you would have to find the time, or if you live in a rural and remote location, have to drive to a large city center to meet with a psychologist like myself face to face for about an hour or so. And really that interaction therapy typically involves being connected with evidence-based skills to manage things like low mood and anxiety. And so what PSPNET does is it flips that model on its head a little bit. We take all of those evidence-based skills and we wrap that up into a program that people can access at their home, whatever time of day works for them. So they engage most exclusively with the website that's designed to be quite interactive in nature. And so people walk themselves through the course and they teach themselves these evidence-based skills. And along the way, PSPNET is also therapist assisted in the sense that people have someone like myself to connect with them typically once a week to make sure that these skills are landing, that they're making sense, and that people are applying them in their daily life. So at its core, PSPNET really kind of flips the traditional therapy paradigm around, and it's an online delivered service to help people improve their mental health.
Is it all self-directed? Is there a referral process?
The nice thing about this, and this is kind of another core value of PSPNET, is we want a flexible and accessible service. So it's all self-referral. So it all starts with our website, www.pspnet.ca. People who identify as public safety personnel or first responder would go there and they would sign themselves up. So in that sense, it gets through any sort of unnecessary hurdles. People don't have to get any sort of referral. They typically go to our website and then they sign up and we take care of the rest.
Now, on that website, there's a red button and a blue button, one that says click here for online therapy for PSP, and one that says click here for resources for family members. It sounds like it's not just me, but the people who support me who can can avail themselves of this service.
Yeah, this is something that we're actually really excited about. It's actually quite new, the families piece, because one of the things that we've heard over the years of delivering PSPNET is that it's not just public safety personnel members that are struggling. It's often something that's brought home with them, and then spouses and significant others will often face similar challenges. And so in addition to the PSPNET course, which is a therapist-assisted course, we have now recently launched the course for families, specifically for spouses and significant others of public safety personnel members. That one is not therapist assisted at this point in time. It's entirely self-directed, but it's still very early days for that component, and we might see some changes in the months or years to come.
How does this work as far as how is this setting people up for success or helping them out with what might be a very traumatic set of experiences? And I'm sure that, when you hear people say, well, I have PTSD, that's not always a clinical diagnosis. Sometimes it's a self-diagnosis. So how does this help in the realm of that conversation about CSIs and PTSD?
Well, one of the things that I think is really important about PSPNET is the online nature and the self-referral process. So in that sense, somebody who might be sitting at home suffering in silence would have a convenient, free, and confidential way to reach out and start educating themselves about their mental health processes. And so it's very low barrier to participate. And because it's flexible and all of the learning happens with our online platform, people can do this from the convenience of their home. They can do this without having to take large amounts of time off. They could do it in the evening. They could do it in the morning. And when they actually engage with the course, one of the things that is built into the course is really to foster an awareness of the mental health process. So this can really be helpful for people who are struggling, but they really don't know what's going on. That's what the course is designed to sort of help with, right at the beginning of the course, to help people identify what we call their cycle of symptoms. Because often the things that we think will affect the way that we feel, and that will also affect the things that we do, often in unanticipated ways. And so just to foster that awareness that these things are related, and then also hooking people up with skills to manage those unhelpful thoughts or unhelpful behaviors can really help people get back on track and take control of their mental health symptoms and put themselves on a better trajectory.
I noticed there's a little quick X button. I assume that's because there's still stigma attached with people seeking out mental wellness, help and therapy. And I'm kind of curious, how much of your work now is using or helping people through PSPNET? It's fairly recent, so I'm just wondering if you know whether this is helping, whether it's working.
We do think it's helping. So one of the things to mention about PSPNET is it has kind of a bit of a long history. So initially, the PSPNET program was launched as a pilot in Saskatchewan and Quebec, and that's been running for about 2 years before it came to the Maritimes. And so fortunately, we were able to publish our findings because we're based out of the University of Regina. Everything that we do needs to be evidence-based, and we're very big into transparency of outcomes. And so Dr. Heather Hadjisaropoulos, which is she's the clinical director of PSPNET, has published on the efficacy of PSPNET. And so we saw in Saskatchewan and Quebec large reductions in depression, large reductions in anxiety, and high referral rates, high satisfaction with the program. And so all of that was a really nice background and backdrop for when we started to expand out here to the Maritime provinces. And so it's been about a year since we've been operating in the Maritimes. We're not going anywhere. And so far, we are still collecting data in the Maritimes, not enough to publish on quite yet, but the preliminary results are indicating, just like what we saw in Saskatchewan and Quebec, large reductions in depression and anxiety, large satisfaction ratings, and a lot of people are starting the program and going all the way through to the end, which is really good from an engagement point of view.
So if I were to fall into one of the categories like a police officer or, a career firefighter, I'm sure I have union support. I have other supports from my employer. So is this to replace that? Is it to work in addition to that? Again, knowing that volunteers for the most part have jobs that have nothing to do with the work they're doing as volunteers, and the likelihood that they're going to be involved with some kind of traumatic event.
Yeah, so the image that we often use in our presentations is of a hallway with many doors. And so in that sense, we don't see ourselves as competition by any means. We actually see ourselves as an additional level of support that people might have to consider. And so, yes, there's definitely a role for peer support. There's a role for employee and family assistance programs, face-to-face services as well. But for some people, they really do find that the nature of PSPNET, the online web-based component, to be really, really helpful. And so this is something that we would offer in conjunction with all these other services, working kind of hand in hand with the other mental health services rather than in competition.
And a reality in rural Nova Scotia sometimes is access to the internet, though. Is there a component over a telephone or in person?
Yeah, so we don't have an in-person stream. The primary assumption is that people who are engaging with PSPNET will have some sort of internet connection. And so the nice thing about that is the way it's designed is it's not overly bandwidth intensive. So people with limited internet connections can get through the course material. And when it comes to that extra level of support, we also have therapist assisted in the PSPNET version of the course. And that can take place using a messaging system built into our website, but that can also take place via weekly phone calls if need be. And so we do have the ability to check in quite briefly with people enrolled in PSPNET over the phone if that be something that they want to supplement their PSP experience with.
With my experience, the folks who are perhaps involved with other careers who choose to be first responders, they are for the most part resilient, self-starters. They are people who want to help others. And it's, I would assume, the crush of the collective experience that makes perhaps the struggle real for them. Do you focus on resilience? Do you focus on building that? Is this about strictly coping? I'm curious as to how you would define that, given the nature of the work these people are doing. Is the goal to get them back doing that work or to help them separate themselves from the anxiety that it brings?
Well, it really depends. That's kind of one of the questions or the answers that you'll often get when you ask a psychologist is it depends. And so it really depends on who's walking through the door and what they want to get out of it. But one of the things that I can say is that the core of cognitive behavior therapy is what we use to build PSPNET. And so these are the same evidence-based tools that you would get if you were to see a face-to-face provider. In some ways, cognitive behavior therapy is the gold standard in treatment. And so for a lot of people, it can be a bit of a Swiss Army knife of sorts. It can help build resilience. It can help reduce unhelpful thoughts. It can help produce helpful behaviors. And so in some ways, that can really apply to the workplace. It can apply to home life. And it's kind of a holistic approach, but really evidence-based. So these are skills that people can take and run with, really depending on what they want to get out of it when they come through the door at PSPNET.
Dr. Luke Schneider, what are you hoping people get from this conversation?
Well, awareness. I really just really want to make sure that people know that if they're in a tough situation, working out in the field as a PSP, as a first responder, that they know that there is another service that's available to them that's low barrier, that's no cost, and it really has a good evidence base behind it, so that people don't have to suffer in silence, and so that they know that we are here and we are absolutely willing and able to help provide treatment.
And I think it bears pointing out this is not a crisis intervention service.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, we do some monitoring to make sure that people are being safe within the course, but we do not function as a crisis intervention service. So this is geared for people who are starting to struggle, maybe people that are struggling a bit more prominently, or even people that are looking to build that resilience that aren't really even struggling yet. Maybe they're new to the role, for example. But again, sort of a service where people have the ability to log in, work themselves through the material, and get some support. But fortunately, within the province, there are some really wonderful crisis support lines and other support services that are available should people require that sort of higher level intervention.
And I'll share the number for the mental health crisis line. You obviously came to this field from a perspective. Why did you choose this stream? Why is this important to you, Doctor?
It's been important to me for a long time. Actually, I started working with Dr. Hadjistervopoulos back in 2009, if you can believe it. And all of my graduate level work has been in the field of internet-delivered cognitive behavior therapy. So from the onset, I saw the value of this in reducing stigma, in increasing flexibility, and really breaking down that barrier so that people have really good access to evidence-based mental health skills. And so it really is something that I believe in. And also the fact that it's in the public system and this is no cost to participants is also something that aligns with my values as well. So I really do see the value in this. And if you look across the world, places like Sweden, places like Australia, they actually have internet CBT woven in to their healthcare system. So in some ways, Canada's a little bit behind the times and we're really trying to play catch up. But there's a lot of really good evidence out there to support this as a very good, safe, and efficacious form of treatment for people.
To corrupt a line from The Simpsons, the internet, the cause and solution to so many of our problems these days.
I suppose so.
Dr. Luke Schneider, again, we'll advise people or let people know about PSPNET. The website is pspnet.ca. It's easy enough to remember. It's easy to find, and it's a resource that's available for folks who are perhaps looking to get a little bit of help, a little bit of support. And I guess on this Blue Monday, we'll wish you all the best yourself. Thank you so much for this.
Yeah, thank you.